Welcome back to another inspiring episode of Personal Mastery Training. I'm Alvin Brown, and while I'm not hosting this time around, I'm proud to introduce this deep and reflective discussion brought to you by the Personal Mastery Alliance. In this episode, the team dives into the concept of reflection, a practice that's essential for understanding who's truly with you in life. They'll explore how relationships and habits either give or take energy, and most importantly, how you can recognize and honor your own value. This conversation is packed with insights to help you create meaningful connections, build empowering habits, and protect your energy as you continue your personal mastery journey. So grab a notebook, settle in, and let's explore the power of reflection together. Here's episode 226.
Hey, well, welcome once again to the Personal Mastery Alliance. We're really thrilled to bring you another session of wisdom and insights. And Brandon had a really kind of, I think, an important topic to bring forward for the meal today because it applies to everyone, and it's something that we can all use to move forward in a more positive direction. So with that, I'll pass it back to Brian.
Right on.
To Brandon.
Thanks, brother. Thanks. And good to see you all. Yeah, so here we are, January 5th, 2025, and at year end, new year beginning, I always try to take some time to reflect. And that's really going to kind of be the meat of what I'm bringing to the table today is reflection. But so often when we hear that word, we think, oh, I'm reflecting back, I'm reflecting on where I've been or what I've done this past year. And that's true, we should. However, where are you currently is another point of reflection. What do you see when you look in the mirror? Who do you see? And then where do you see what you reflect? Where do you envision going forward? Um, and that's kind of where I wanted to start the conversation today and bring that to the table, and then dive into a few other aspects of that. Maybe a few other dishes, if you will, and some dessert. So.
Yeah, I think the reflection is that is really essential, right? So that we can make sure that we can set a course where we look back this time next year, we can see all the progress we made. But that reflection is so important because, what things work for us, what things served us in our lives, and what things did not serve us, right? And that might be a process, that might be a habit, or that might be people, right? And when we reflect, it's really clear when you look back at the different people that you have at your table, who's contributing, who is positive, who is breathing life into you, right? Who's speaking courage into you versus someone that's taking energy, right? Discouraging. And if you don't reflect on that and take the time to do so, then it's easy to kind of fall into some traps and not realizing that you have some people in your life taking your energy, or you have some habits in your life that are taking your energy as well, whether it be doom scrolling, that's a term now, or maybe your sleeping habits aren't serving you, or maybe the food that you're eating is not serving you. So it is a good time to really reflect and get a clear picture on where you're at and the changes you can make in 2025 to improve your situation. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Mm. The word that comes to my mind, as I listen to you guys, is the briefing. The briefing, and it's something that's so crucial, I believe, and a term I wasn't so accustomed to even before this past year. I was gonna say this year, it's a new year already. This past year, when you complete something so often we don't take the time to really, really debrief, you know, look at it in all its phases, see what we done really, or what we did really, really well, what we didn't do so well, so we can adjust, reflect, as both of you said so well, but deeply analyze also. Analyze to understand, okay, to understand so we can have better decision making, maybe even better accountability from what we set to accomplish before. You know, I don't even know if most people remember what were their resolutions for 2024, if they had any, you know, if they had any, that's how fast a year goes by. Okay. And that's how important it is to reflect, as both of you said, and analyze. Because as we embark on this new year, 2025, um, I think a big mistake is simply to just keep rolling along without really looking back. We always say you got to look forward, you got to look forward, but hey, sometimes you got to sit down, and it's important to really look back and assess exactly where you're at and why you're there and what elements, okay, created this reality that you're in, whether you're happy with it or not. And if you have the right people around you, the right habits around you, I just downloaded this audio book from Matthew McConaughey. It's entitled Green Lights, and I thought that concept is really really interesting. Where in his life, certain elements came by, you know, at different moments, and he calls them green lights. These are the things that you push on forward. This is the time. This is the right moment. This is where I go forward. But there are yellow lights and red lights also, and you need to be able to see them and what they are and when to stop or when to put them away. That's a great exercise, I believe, for a new year, for a life, but really for anyone. If you're in business, if you lead a sports team, if you're a father, if you're in a relationship, it's an important thing to do because as life moves forward, we also evolve. Are we evolving in the right direction? You know, as Brendan said, also, do we have the right people in our corner? Is it really a time for a yellow and red light? You know, to seriously assess that and figure out where is it that we truly want to go, and are we equipped to go there? Okay, so this concept of reflecting and debriefing, I believe, is so crucial, and it's one that's often kind of passed by. You know, hey, what's next? Let's keep moving forward. Um, Starting off the conversation today with a football example, guys. Usually they come on later, but there's the national championship coming on soon. We're in the quarterfinals, I believe, for college football. Um, Now it gets to a point where it's all great teams. Okay. When it comes to talent wise, they're pretty much all equal or almost. There's no more blowouts or mismatches. Now it comes down to will, but also comes down to strategy and coaching. And I can tell you for a fact that these teams, okay, these coaches, they're going back. They're watching themselves throughout the year. They're watching their opponent, throughout the season. And that's what they're using to create their strategy in order to win and accomplish their goals. If at the highest level, sports teams, organizations do that, isn't it so important that we should do that in our lives too? At the highest level to debrief. So I wrote it down in bold. I'm in the process of doing that right now. The kids were at home, and I'm so blessed. We had so much fun, but man, I'm ready to get back to work. I'm a little bit tired, but I've definitely started the process of looking at my whole year, looking at my goals, looking at my passions, really making sure all of that is very clear and a strategy for this next year is simple, It's clear, but it's based on real data, real truth that I can look at myself in the mirror and know where I'm going with the right facts, the right plan. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, always interesting listening. You think you have an idea, a topic of discussion, and then all these other things pop in your head, right? And what I want to focus on immediately is your comment, Ray, about just kind of glazing over, right? I think it's critical for individuals, myself included, to really be honest with ourselves and dive deep into it. I look at, for example, this past year, I traveled extensively across the United States, and I made a commitment to myself in 2025. I was going to cut that in half and was going to be more strategic. So as I'm committing to what's coming, as opportunities are present themselves, I have to evaluate based on that reflection, based on that debrief, if you will, which I'm a big fan of that word, debriefing, after an event, after a meeting, after whatever the case may be. Um, Even if it feels like you don't need to, you probably should, right? Kind of take inventory of what went well, what didn't, successes, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but I look at 2024 from a reflection debrief standpoint, and if I really dive into it, there was some stuff that I was involved in. There were some activities, there were some events I went to that I really didn't need to, right? If I'm being totally honest. And maybe again, you talk about being clear and simple and the real data. Some of that comes down to you got to ask yourself was I pouring into other people and benefiting other people, or was it just my ego, right? It was my ego that was doing it and doing some ego checks. And that's hard for folks as we reflect on the past and then we look forward on what we're going to commit to. Um, Dr. Charlie, you were talking about, you mentioned people, right? And I mentioned a little bit of that kind of right out of the gate of who's at the table. Um, that's hard. I want to talk about that as well, because that's hard to do. And I think so many individuals, we stay connected to people just out of the being validated by them, the fear of missing out of something, or it's just what we do because they're our friend, they're a coworker, they're a family member in some cases, and there's that need or that thought process and feeling of I have to be connected to this person still, just by default, and that's not true. If you've got six chairs at the table and they're full, but you got a couple of wrong people sitting at the table, right? You don't have room for somebody else to sit down. And I said this, I think I said this a while back on a different conversation. You yourself might be sitting at the wrong table. Maybe that ain't your table to be sitting at. You might have to you might have to excuse yourself from that table and maybe go build a new table, right? And start fresh, or sit down at the correct table. May be the case as well. I think the simple, we as humans, no matter what it is, it's my belief we kind of overcomplicate everything, right? I think it's important to be thorough. It's important to dive in, dive deep, look at the real data, be honest with yourself. But I've been reading a couple of different books lately, and one of them was talking about how we will just overanalyze and overanalyze and overcomplicate the situation when it's really just that cut and dry. Like, hey, you probably shouldn't be doing this. That's not good for you. It's not good for your family. It's not going to get you where you need to go. You talk about habits and you know are you eating? Are you getting up at a certain time? Um, are you being intentional with yourself and what you are doing? So that's I'll pause there and pass the mic.
Lots there to chew on, fellas. Lots there to chew on. Um, I think one really important point is that when we're talking about people at your table and having the right people there, we're not saying that the people sitting at your table are deliberately, doing anything malicious and that there should be this big confrontation and all that. Not saying that at all. But sometimes it's not the best situation for you, right? And you have to look at that relationship and say, hey, this person doesn't mean me any ill will. However, it's not the best situation for me. It's not the best relationship for me and where I am in my life and who I am. And that's fair and that's fine. And that's a hard choice to make sometimes, but we have to make that, right? For sure. And then, the green light, yellow light, red light. I really like that concept from Matthew McConaughey, and it makes me think of this start, stop, continue. And it's very similar thought process, Hey, are there things that would enhance my life that I need to start doing, right? Like reaching out to friends on a regular basis. Like we gotta, we do have to put in work to maintain those relationships, right? So is that something I need to start being more intentional about, as you mentioned, Brandon? Or are there things that I shouldn't be doing, right? Like there's no overanalyzing this. I don't need to overanalyze it. If it's something I shouldn't be doing, I just need to stop it, right? And then are there things that are serving me, right? I need to continue those things. Hey, I'm exercising regularly, or I'm eating a healthy diet, or yeah, or I've got a real good sleep hygiene. Continue, right? So, but at the same time, we've got to be constantly looking at our lives for areas of opportunity, and that's reflection. After an event, we debrief instead of simply going on and on and on. I remember working for an organization, and we would have these sales pitches, and hey, we're the final four. And as an insurance brokerage firm, we're one of the finalists. And there's oral presentations, and sometimes I was on those teams, and then we would win, that's great, or we wouldn't win. But in both scenarios, we never debriefed. We never sat down and said, hey, this really worked. The client really liked these aspects of the presentation. That's why they chose us. Or when we didn't get chosen, we didn't sit down and say, hey, what didn't work in that presentation? What's the feedback on why they went in a different direction? I thought we really missed opportunities there to grow individually if you're in the room, and then grow as an organization, because a pattern is going to emerge, right? If you debrief and make that a regular habit in your personal and professional life, you're going to see patterns emerge. And then, hey, this is where I can modify my behavior, to achieve better outcomes in the future. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
I love that term, patterns. You know, patterns. That's such an important word when it comes to situation. I want to go back quickly to what Brennan was talking about the table. Okay, uh, looking at the table, are you even at the right table? That's a very important question to ask because, as we all know, I mean, Brandon, you're a speaker, Charlie, you're a speaker. I've been speaking. Um, it's important to have the right audience. Okay, that's so important to have the right audience. You can be the best of the best at what you do, but audience, it won't look good. It won't work out. You'll feel bad. You'll feel like you're really bad at it. It's not necessarily the case. And oftentimes in our lives, maybe we simply have the wrong audience. If you have this great vision, okay, and this great thing in your heart, in your mind, but you are completely surrounded by people that every time you open your mouth, they tear it down. Hey, it's very important for that thing to manifest that You change your surroundings very, very quickly. And easier said than done, as we all know, because we're human beings. We come from where we come from. We get attached to, we get attached with for whatever reasons. Okay, for whatever reasons. But as Brandon said, and it's so true, at some point in our lives, it's really important to reflect and assess whether or not, are these relationships, okay, the right ones for us, no matter what the connection is, and how can we move forward? How can we move forward, right? So this concept of having the right audience, and I want to continue in that route where there used to be a term again in football. Coaches used to say that all the time is I'm looking for RKGs. That's what they call RKGs, and that means the right kind of guys. The right kind of guys. It means not everyone can be here. Not everyone's supposed to be here, and that's okay. Okay, that's okay. You can be as talented as you want. You cannot play here or be in this institution because you're not our and we're for you. Um, so whether we're talking about a guy or a gal, okay, in this situation, understand who are your RKGs, okay? Who are your RKGs in life, and in order to attract them, you have to be an RKG yourself. That also comes with it, you know. If I don't become this person that attracts the right people, the right elements at my table, they will not come because they're also looking to attach themselves to very specific things or very specific people, right? And that's why reflecting, debriefing is so important because it allows you to see the patterns. It allows you to see these key points, key elements, first for your life, and then in order to take the next steps and bring on the tools and bring on the people that you need to ultimately achieve your goals and even better than have a life where you can truly pursue personal mastery, whatever that looks like for you. So in the end, it always starts with us, right? It always starts with us. Um, it's really cool as I write down my notes, Charlie and Brendan. I put my notes in folders, but I named the folders by year. And I see the first folder is 2022. Okay, 2022, first folder. So, man, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 years. Well, we're going on 4 years now of doing this. And I think that's really, really amazing. But the reality is, if I wasn't committed and humble enough and willing to put ego at the door enough, um, I wouldn't be in these. I wouldn't be in these calls. You know, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't be in these calls. So again, why? Why is that? Because I wanted to build the right table for me, but I needed to be the right guy in order to attract the right people and connect with the right people and have a seat at their table. That's something that is very, very important to understand also because it's so easy to point fingers and say, well, they have this opportunities because they're lucky or they have that or they have that and not me and it's not fair. But ultimately, you don't look at the patterns. Okay. You don't look at the why is that? Why is that? Okay. Uh, why is that? So I'll leave it with this for now. But yeah, being the right kind of guys, looking at the patterns and making sure you have the right audience You have the right audience, all these things together. And I'll pass the mic.
Well, it's always fun to sit back and just watch it all come together because it's definitely from my initial thoughts in regards to the ingredients for this meal, for some personal mastery, and all of this ties right into and is so complimentary of the ultimate mission of this, and that's just discovering personal mastery, fine tuning that personal mastery, and the direction you just went with it, Ray, is one that I think you have to, and that goes down to that reflection of what's in the mirror, right? The right kind of guy. Well, you got to be the right kind of guy or the right kind of gal. You got to be the right kind of person, and you're going to attract who you are. I mean, sure, there's going to be those wild card situations where you're going to attract some unwanted personalities, if you will, and some unwanted traits that are going to come into your realm. But if you've got yourself fine tuned, right, and on track, and you're vigilant, right, you're going to feel that vibe, right? You're going to know, you ever, I guess my question for folks is, or the examples, you ever been around an individual or somebody's come into the room, or you've been speaking, they come up and they've spoken to you, or vice versa, and there's just that gut feeling, right? That vibe of something's off, right? Or they're not a good person, or and that sounds judgmental, but truth, real talk, right? That's what this is. Um, it, when they're just something is off, and maybe it's not a person, maybe it's a group, right? It's an environment, right? And do you stay? Is the question there? No, you don't, or you shouldn't, anyways, in my opinion. Um, but that self-reflection and looking in the mirror of what kind of person are you? What kind of person have you been? Right, to that inventory of looking back. Was I a person of integrity? Did I follow through on my commitments? Did I keep my word? Was I a good friend, um, colleague, boss, etc.? Um, it is important. And I think if you're honest with yourself and you can do that, then you can take steps to be intentional going forward. And that's going to allow you to identify the right people to have at your table to build you up and lift you up and hold you accountable, right? There's an accountability piece to some of this too, right? I see Charlie smiling there like, yeah, there we go. Um, but also believe I was just having a conversation with someone the other day that is going through some difficult situations in life. And they were saying, hey, they were telling me, they were very kind, and it was like, Brandon, you've really been an inspiration to me, and just thank you so much. And, hold me accountable. And I told them, I said, yeah, but you can hold yourself accountable, right? You don't need me to tell you to you don't necessarily need me to be the one to jumpstart this for you every day. You can look in the mirror and you can tell yourself, right? Self-talk, whether it's positive or negative, is so powerful, so powerful. And I think it's something that's underlooked or undervalued in how we see ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, and then holding ourselves accountable. No, I'm not going to eat that. No, I'm not going to do that. Right. Instead, I'm going to do this because this is going to help me get to this goal. Right. It's going to help me achieve this ultimate outcome. Um, and ultimately, from a debriefing standpoint, reflection standpoint, I'm going to be better off than where I was last year or a year ago. Right. Or 2022. I'm no doubt, Ray, where you are today in life from a personal mastery standpoint, you personally, your family, your career, everything is probably better off than where you were in 2022.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I can say that. I just went through the conversation, it's year end, beginning of the year. So, the conversations of salary and what does next year look like and bonus stuff, some folks that are fortunate enough. I never had a bonus till I came to work where I'm at today professionally. And salary is just something that, it just is what it was back then. And today it's like I was reflecting on where I was in 2019 compared to today, and it's it doesn't even seem real to me. So but what can I do in 25 to continue to make an impact for myself, my family, and the world around me is the question. That's why I think reflection, debriefing, and being intentional and accountable is so important for personal mastery. With that, I'll pass the mic.
Wow. Great stuff, fellas. Great stuff. One of the big things I took from that is just, becoming, who are you and on all the things that you're doing in your personal and professional life. Who are you becoming, right? Are you becoming that person that's going to attract the right type of people around you? Are you becoming that person that's going to attract the right opportunities to come into your life, right? Because again, as Ray mentioned earlier, there are other people out there that are looking for the same, that are looking to upgrade their situation. They're looking to connect with the right kind of people that are going to help them grow personally and professionally, like-minded people with that growth mindset. And it doesn't matter where you are now, it's where you want to be, where you're going. And you can be intentional about shifting your thought patterns, and therefore shifting your vibration, the type of vibe you're putting out that's going to attract others around you. Another point I wrote down too is being at that right table is so important. And you have to really reflect and understand and know what your value is, so that even if other people don't see it, you see it, and you're not going to devalue yourself based on someone else's opinion of you. And so there's always so many interesting examples of this, and to where you look at someone that's super successful today, but to find out in their past how many people passed on them or didn't think what they were doing was that great. An example I like to use often, because most people have heard of the Beatles, right? But there was a record label that turned the Beatles down and told them they had no future in music. And again, what if they would have walked away from that? Oh man, they said we were not good. And it was a record label, a well-known record label that's still in existence today. But they told the Beatles that they couldn't play, which is amazing. So I used to be a big boxing fan years ago. Not so much now. I think the sport's kind of, the way it's run is not good, and so it's kind of hurt itself, and to MMA's credit, they filled that void. They're doing a lot of things right, and so they passed boxing as far as popularity. But my favorite boxer of all time is Manny Pacquiao, and he's arguably the greatest fighter. He's in the conversation for top two or three. He's the only 8 division world champion ever. He won a world championship in 8 different weight classes. But what I didn't know was when he first came to the United States from the Philippines, and his trainer was talking about this, the first 6 gyms that he went to passed on him. They thought he was too small. He's never going to be a big draw, never going to hit the big time. And I'm thinking, they told Manny Pacquiao no. 6 different gyms. And Freddie Roach was the trainer that saw that talent and said, oh, yeah, I'm going to sign this kid, and signed him. And he won his first world championship. I mean, he only been with Freddie Roach, I think, less than a year. And they took a fight on late notice. Somebody had backed out on a championship fight. So a guy had a belt. He'd been a champion for like 6 or 7 years. And so they took the fight on 2 weeks' notice, and Manny Pacquiao stopped the guy like in 6th or 7th round and won it. And all of a sudden, everybody knew who Manny Pacquiao was, and the rest is history. But to know that 6 or 7 gyms passed on him, didn't think he was the right kind of guy, and they were wrong. But to his credit, he believed in his talent, and when he did get around, did get to the right table, um, he was able to flourish and be the only 8 division world champion in the history of boxing. I think the next closest maybe is 5 different weight classes that another boxer has done. But to win world champ, be the best in the world at 8 different weight classes is incredible. And to do so in a very dynamic, exciting way is very exciting to watch on top of all of it. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, Manny Pacquiao, amazing athlete, for sure. And it's funny, when we look back and we find how many great, successful people, if we call them, were passed on. Okay, were passed on, and again, it comes back to this word, really, humility. Let's say, okay, humility, where it doesn't matter who you are. Uh, Obviously, there's greatness in you. There are extraordinary things in you, but there's also ordinary. Okay. And it's important not to forget that, not get ahead of ourselves. Okay. Uh, that's just the human nature. Sometimes when things go well, we tend to, boast high, and when things don't, we tend to go very, very low. But I wrote this down. Any expert or master um, in the road to becoming that was once a beginner, had to be a beginner. Okay. This whole process, there are natural laws, okay, rules that really, in some shape or form, we might not name them every single week. But as I look back and every time I leave our conversations, I realize, man, this is a true law, a blueprint that we talked about today. Okay, that if applied leads to certain result. If applied over time, consistently incorporated, all of that stuff. Okay, so what do I mean by that exactly? If we go back to the Beatles again, okay, or Manny Pacquiao, the people that passed on them at that moment, they were probably right. Okay, they were probably right. Maybe they weren't that good yet. Okay, maybe they weren't that good yet, but I'm pretty sure what they did, they took the criticism or the feedback, they reflected on it, they debriefed, and then the important part is because you can reflect all you want, it doesn't mean anything unless you do, right? Unless you do. And that's what those people, I'm pretty sure all of them, when you look at their story, they kept chopping away. They kept believing, but they kept being surrounded, again, as Brandon said, with the right people that built them up, not tear them down. They kept shaping themselves and becoming, who they truly envisioned to be. And then all of a sudden, overnight celebrity. When they were at it for years, they failed for years, they were passed on. The lesson from this is that that's normal. That's part of it. That is the process. That is life. Okay, that is life. Anything great you want to accomplish, you're first a beginner at it. Okay, you're first a beginner at it. You're gonna be rejected. It might not work. You may have some parts of the puzzle. You don't have all of it. As you continue to work, well, study at the same time. Study the process. Study yourself. Study it yourself. But once you get the right information, act on it. Okay, that's the other very powerful element, in my opinion, where we don't want to just become information gatherer or be that person that simply reads every book. Okay, reads every book but really never applies or truly tries to understand and simply said, "Hey, I read the book. Uh, I don't know why I'm not a millionaire yet. I don't know why I'm not this yet. I did everything I was supposed to be. Well, I'm pretty sure life or some person, some expert somewhere told you or gave you the clues. How did you take in the information? Did you take it personally in a bad way, or did you take it in a way to improve? Okay. And again, so important, right? Because whether I forgot who said this, whether it was Charlie or Brandon, but how self-talk is so important, positive or negative. You take it internally. Well, same thing, the external information too, guys. If you simply have negative things coming your way over time, it's not the best. But internally, if you become the right person, you can take this information and see it exactly for what it is. Is it an opportunity for me to rise? Is it constructive feedback? Or is it something, quite frankly, I should simply not listen to because it doesn't matter with where I'm going and the goals I'm trying to accomplish? That's an important thing to decipher. Certain advice you shouldn't listen to. Okay. Uh, if Manny Pacquiao and the Beatles saw in their mind that they would become who they wanted to become, it didn't matter if people refused them or put them aside. It was not going to stop them. But they knew they still had to work. They knew they weren't this yet. They knew they had to keep moving forward, right? So that's another very important part, I believe, right? In just understanding that you are ordinary, okay? Don't think too much of yourself. You are just like anybody else. Everybody can be great, can be great. Not everyone becomes that. Uh, Staying exactly, yeah, exactly. Just, anyways, whether you're a believer, you're not a believer, I mean, a great example for that, I'll just say Jesus, a great example, but let's say someone who's a God who comes down to serve, you know, serve people, not thinking they're above anybody else, but that's really the way I believe to be open and to grow. Okay. To grow. You're not above the laws of nature. Okay. None of us are. None of us are. But how we accept them and apply them changes everything. But ultimately, it comes down to what we do also. Okay. What we know, but then we do. And with this, I'll pass the mic.
You know what? Just again, another incredible conversation, and always feeling like there's going to be a part two, right? I don't know if we've had a part two of any of ours yet. We just keep rolling, right? But Ray, I can't agree more um, with a couple of statements. One, everybody has the ability to be great, but then if we step back and look, not everybody is though, right? There's a lot of people that think they're great. I've been one of those people too, and if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? But so many go so far and then stop. They stop putting in the work or the routine of it, right? You do it once, like you said, hey, I read this book, I should be a millionaire. I mean, come on. It tells me everything I got to do. And why isn't this happening? Well, because it can take time, right? You talk about the laws of nature. Evolution. I mean, you pick anything, nothing just happens immediately in most situations, right? I mean, sure, there's those freak incidents, if you will, and just complete anomalies of individual success or where they want to be in life. But a lot of the times it's the routine, the mundane, the boring, the pain, right? Pain's non-negotiable. We've talked about that before. Um, and the pain, and it's not just physical pain, just the boring routine can be painful too, right? Of doing the same thing over and over. I mean, you like look at Arnold Schwarzenegger. right? We talk about some great folks out. I mean, to get to where he was, in his prime, that didn't happen overnight. Some of these other individuals that are Mr. Olympia, some of them, I mean, there's a few guys that I follow. I'm not even going to try to name them because I'll butcher their names, but I can see their faces. And the amount of work, discipline, and consistency they put in over years, not just a few weeks, not a few months, not a year, but multiple years stacked on top of each other to achieve that ultimate goal for them, that level of greatness that they desire. Now, there's going to be different levels, right? Some folks are going to be happy just kind of happy where they are. It just is what it is. I've gotten to a place personally where I hate to say despise the idea of just like, well, it just is what it is. And that's just good enough. And that's just how it's going to be. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? It doesn't have to be this status quo of, we're going to work a 9 to 5 and make $150,000 a year, middle, uh, um, middle income, if you will, and live for 80 years and that's it. We can be greater. We can have an impact. We could, if we strategically, intentionally make the right decisions, surround ourselves, whether it's reading a book or a program or, being around the right folks too. And sometimes those right people come out of nowhere. You talking about Manny, I immediately thought of Kurt Warner. I mean, he was, stuffing groceries in paper bags, right at a grocery store. You never know who that next great person is that's going to, step up and shine. But then also I think about it from the standpoint of who's going to have an influence on your life, right? It could just be a conversation. I've been talking to some friends lately, and we were discussing how, travel season this end of the year and guaranteed to happen this coming year, where you're going to have situations where you're going to get delayed. And it's your mindset and perspective of, man, this is happening to me. Oh, it's the end of the world, right? You're upset, you're frustrated. And my buddy Rich Jones made a point to say, actually, I look at it from the standpoint of I get to. I get to be delayed. I get to sit here next to this person. I get to have the opportunity to maybe even have a conversation with them. So changing your mindset of what's going on around you, even if it's mundane, even if it's routine, even if it's painful, I truly believe there's always an opportunity for us to grasp that next thing, whether it's a conversation, an opportunity to learn, right, or evolve and be better ourselves, or maybe it's just some downtime and quiet time. How many of us take time to just be still, right? I've been delayed in traveling before, and I've made a point where I've been carrying a book with me. I'm gonna read a book, or I'm just gonna sit and be still and just maybe meditate. How often are we actually doing that, right? And which again falls right in line with an opportunity to reflect on where I'm at and what's going on and what am I doing. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, you were reminding me of something there, Brandon. Um, the opportunity, right, that we all have. And, delays is one example there that we've all been there where, you're delayed or something doesn't go right. And man, I think I even mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, but it's a Napoleon Hill quote. One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. And that it's going to happen. But how do we navigate that, right? Do we capitalize on it, or we're like, oh, um, I'm just stuck here and look out the window for 3 hours or whatever it is, instead of taking that opportunity to get to know someone and have a conversation. And that conversation can potentially be life changing. We're always one person away, one conversation away, or one idea away from changing our life, the trajectory of our life, the lives of our family. We're always this close. And so just keeping that in mind is so important. But one of the things I also wrote down here was looking for, extraordinary results. I mean, people think about these goals and visions they have and what they'd really like to accomplish, and it's extraordinary. And there's no extraordinary accomplishment without extraordinary effort. So even as you were saying, Brandon, these things that seem boring, you're doing it every day, every week, every month. It's a grind, but it's extraordinary effort that you're putting in because most people aren't willing to do that. It's not exciting. It's not thrilling. Doesn't seem like it's getting you anywhere. Then all of a sudden, right, things change dramatically because you put in that extraordinary effort. And so, how can I expect extraordinary results if I haven't put in extraordinary amount of preparation or an extraordinary amount of discipline and work or created extraordinary relationships, right? It's got to be extraordinary. It's got to map, it's got to match up. So that's a that's a really important factor. And then the other thing too, I think is really important in all this is that opportunities don't always appear initially as opportunities. They come as in disguise sometimes. And when we can't see through the smoke screen and recognize an opportunity, it can pass us by and then someone else that will see it and then capitalize on it, right? And there's just there's just so many times where there's a shift in the culture in, let's say, a community or a country, and that shift in culture creates an opportunity, right? Like before the pandemic, I mean, there was no DoorDash, Uber Eats, all these things that are huge now in the United States. I think they were around, but I never heard of people really getting food and groceries regularly delivered to their front door. Now it's a big thing, right? But we had that shift to create an opportunity, and people capitalized on it, right? And and it's not just that opportunity is not just for someone; it's for everyone that can recognize it and then do something about it, not just simply say, I read this book. Why am I not a millionaire? Right? No, there's a lot of work and things that have to happen between the reading of the book and the actuality of achieving that goal. I remember when the years ago when that movie came out, The Secret, right? And there's a book, and people felt like, oh, I read the book and I watched the movie, like they're gonna be suddenly teleported into this new life and have all of this success. And I've had conversations with just a few people on that, but I'm like, I mean, it was a good movie and it was a good book, but when you're thinking about manifesting and law of attraction and vibration, you know, that's a kindergarten class. There's a lot of classes after kindergarten that you have to pass before you get your graduate degree, and if you ultimately want to achieve and earn your doctorate. But that movie, that book, that was a first step. That wasn't the step. That was a first step. And so then people were disappointed when their life didn't change. Well, I'm like, well, you graduated kindergarten, now there's first grade. You got to go. You got to keep going up that ladder until you get to a point where you understand the laws of attraction, how it works, how to manifest your goals, and then that also important work that goes with all that to again achieve your ultimate destination. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Hmm. We started off I think right before the call, talking about how fast 2024 went by, right? How fast it went by. And it just reminds me how this whole thing, okay, of life often feels like a sprint, but it's really a marathon. Okay, it's really a marathon if we're lucky enough. If we're lucky enough, or again, we had another conversation about luck, if that's even such a thing. Okay, the things we put in also. Here's what I mean. Here's what I mean by that. Okay, Trelly, you talked about extraordinary results, right? How they come from extraordinary efforts. Sometimes an extraordinary effort could be something as simple as doing something ordinary, but committing to it and being disciplined enough to do it over a long period of time. That's extraordinary, also, right? So I'll give you guys a quick example about that. We look at LeBron James, for instance. He's the all-time scoring leader in the NBA. Okay, all-time scoring leader. But what people don't necessarily realize is that he's also the all-time leader in missed shots. Okay, in missed shots. No one has ever missed more shots in the history of the NBA than LeBron James. If you look at Michael Jordan, he's up there. Kobe Bryant, I think he's top two. Okay, top two. So miss more shots than anyone. That's where resilience, resolve, persistence is so important. Okay, when it comes to this, because in order to achieve anything extraordinary, or to become that RKG, or to just live this life, we have to develop how resilient we are. Okay, we have to have resolve. We need to be persistent. That's another big part of that. And how do you develop that? How do you develop that? It's by showing up every day. It's by surrounding yourself. It's by debriefing, seeing the patterns, right? Seeing the patterns. So I wanted to start with that. And then I'll give you guys another quick example I wrote down. But I was lucky enough probably 2 months ago. I had a great conversation. I had him on my podcast. A man named Garrick Jones. Okay, Garrick Jones. He's currently seating, I believe, the board of directors for the NFLPA in Houston, and he's also the CEO of a company called 73 Holdings. So he's on a mission to bring sports ownership to athletes, basically. So he's educating athletes on their finances, helping them start businesses, and getting groups together to make sure that like they have a say in ownership. They get parts in like major sports businesses, and he kind of goes all around the U.S. and in Canada. He's also involved with the new basketball team, WNBA basketball team here in Canada. So he's doing a lot of different things, and he graced me with his time, and we had a great conversation. Okay. And one thing that Garrick said that stuck with me is how no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to do it for you. You know, the right kind of people at your table, they don't always just come out of nowhere. Okay. We don't always have that luck. Sometimes we have to find them. We have to seek them, right? So that's another important thing is how intentional are we in bringing the right people to our table? How urgent are we also in our day-to-day life to accomplish certain things? Garrett he's played in the NFL for many years now. He's an accomplished businessman, but his story was amazing. He told me he was an undrafted guy, okay, and he basically got to know an NFL scout. And he went to his family, and his family got together. They said, okay, we're going to take whatever little money that we have, and for the next 6 months, we're just going to fund your little NFL dream. And anywhere that scout went, Garrett showed up. Okay, Garrett showed up, for a practice too. And he kept dominating higher rated guys, and it got him a very long career in the NFL. So what I mean by that, just from this example again, is that he went out and sought the people that he needed to have, and that came from him again. Okay, so same thing for us. Again, just how resilient are we? How long are we willing to run this marathon and do the little things that serve us every single day to seek out whatever we need in our life? And how do we contribute every single day? That's another important question, I believe, is that we tend to want people to do it for us naturally because that's the easy thing. But what are we doing ourselves? You know, I think a few calls back also we talked about initiating. You know, initiating. That's a big part of it too. We want extraordinary results. We want an extraordinary life. We have to be the catalyst and the initiator of that. We want a great table. We have to be the first one, with the hammer and the nails, you know. And that's another big thing, just accountability, responsibility. Uh, and with that, I'll pass them.
Well, here we are, the final few minutes, right? As always, it comes fast. Um, you mentioned something. You mentioned, Ray, was the easy button, right? And in this evolution of going around the table here, and I just think I want to end with that as a focus point of, I mean, obviously everything we've talked about this has been incredible, but we all have to understand there is no easy button, right? There's a few individuals sure been born into wealth and have had things handed to them. We've all heard the phrase on a silver platter or platinum platter, maybe. Um, but at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is, even there's a lot of those individuals that have lost everything, right? And have had to start over. And you think about how many individuals that had to start from the beginning, how many times, right, to be successful, to get where they wanted to be. Nowhere along the line, I would think it's safe to say that there was an easy button that they just, hey, if I do this, everything's going to magically appear in front of me and it's just going to be laid out and everything's going to be great. It takes hard work, right? And as you just said, you have to start somewhere, right? You have to take that first initial step. And sometimes that first initial step can be the hardest, but I also find that maybe it's step 100, right? Because you've been going and going and it's that mundane, it's that routine, and you have to keep on keeping on at the end of the day to get to where it is that you want to be. And I think we all have an opportunity to get where we want to go and to be great. And with that, I'll pass the mic.
Well, I love the discussion, fellas. It's been a great meal, and I think there's a lot for people to to choose from and to digest as they go about their weeks. So, at the end, what's our word for the week?
I'll go with what Brandon just said. Keep on keeping on. It's not one word, but yeah, that's what I'll do. It's keep on keeping on, man. If the recipe is there, believe in it, keep going, keep on keeping on.
My word for the week is opportunity. So that's what I'm going to go with on that. So
I love it. I'm gonna kind of piggyback on what Ray said. The word for me is perseverance, right? Persevere. And Napoleon said, victory belongs to the most persevering. So we have the work ethic, we have the vision, we're becoming, we're doing all the things we need to do. But within that, we're going to have trials, we're going to have tribulations, obstacles are going to appear. We have to persevere. And if we do that, then we'll eventually get to our goals.
Yeah.
Well, fellas, it's been another great session.
as always, as
Always
always.
great to
Yeah.
see you all. And
Happy New Year's. Happy New
yeah,
Year's to
Yeah,
this is
everybody.
the
happy New Year's.
first week back, really regular. I had a couple of weeks where I was out and behind the scenes working, but not, publicly working. So this will be the first week back in the
Back in
mainstream.
the mix.
So looking
Anybody
forward.
reading any good books? I know I threw that out there a few months ago, like, hey, we should throw out some books every now and then. And anybody reading some good books? With your nose in.
I just got one referred to me the other day. I haven't picked it up yet, but I'm going to, and it's called The Courage to be Disliked.
Mm.
And yeah.
Nice.
I'm reading Green Lights right now by Matthew McConaughey, and
That's
I
on my
just got
list,
done.
brother.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And I just got done Obsessed by Emily Hayward. It's more about like mindset, marketing, really interesting book.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice. I was graciously gifted an incredible book by an incredible individual that's on this call called the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Mm.
And I'm on like number 6, and I'll tell you what I find interesting too is how much of it I feel like so far I can relate to everything I've read and
Mm.
understand it and know it in some aspect. But there's a lot of fine tuning going on, right? Some polishing of myself and thoughts and processes, and it's just like, just the reflection aspect, just to number 6 so far has been wow. So yeah, it's been good. I've also been trying to wrap up. I'm one of those guys that I bounce around a little bit on books, so I might read a couple. But I've been picking up and putting down "Relentless" by Tim Grover, which has been good.
It's a really good
I'm
book.
about halfway through that one.
Yeah,
So,
that's another good one. Really
oh
great.
man, the cleaner, yep, just amazing.
Yeah, that dude.
Right on, man.
He's been successful for a reason. So that's also awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, fellas.
Hey, it's been great. Love you guys.
Love you too.
Thank you.
So
Have an
yeah,
awesome week.
yeah, and we got to send
You
out
too.
plenty of peace,
Right.
lots of love,
Love
and
So
sprinkle some soul in between.
and soul. And shout out to our man Alvin Brown. Looking forward
yes,
to see
Absolutely,
you soon.
absolutely. Keeping them in our prayers and
Yeah,
looking forward to having them back on the call soon.
yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
All right. Love
All
you.
right,
Take care,
fellas.
guys.
Talk
See
to
you
you soon.
soon.